Welcome to another exciting episode of Unscripted. That's how it usually happens. I don't care. Unscripted life lessons. We laugh, and it's live and it's unscripted. And today I have a wonderful guest, an author here from Tampa, Florida. His name is Tyler Gillespie. I saw him 2 weeks ago on the Creative Morning event, and I'm so happy you're here. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Tyler, it was absolutely interesting for me to listen to your how do you say, like, to your speech, because you, coming from Florida, have a complete different view, of course, of Florida than it is for me, coming from Germany, where Florida is one of the most loved, famous, and well-known states. But you had a very interesting speech about the famous Florida man that we don't know anything about. What's the difference of Florida in the States, Florida seen out of Florida, and whatever we see in Florida in Germany or in Europe?
That's interesting. The book, I have two books about Florida, and one is called Florida Man
Hmm.
Poems. And so I guess about maybe 7 years ago, I started thinking about and seeing a lot of the Florida Man headlines, which for folks who don't know, it says something like Florida man threw alligator through Wendy's drive-through window, or Florida man got arrested for shooting at a cloud or something. It's kind of outlandish, but it's also criminal, like they've been arrested for something.
Hmm.
So the internet kind of circulated these headlines, and there was a Twitter account that aggregated them that was called the Florida Man Twitter, and it had like 400,000 followers at one point.
Wow.
So it was pretty big, and this was a few years ago. And so I started to be interested in what is the Florida man? How does this represent Florida? What does it say about Florida? Why is that happening? And then I looked at the history of kind of the state and the Florida men and women who have made headlines here to check and track the kind of trajectory of that.
It is super interesting. I started to read your book. I'm not through yet, but reading about your youth and as like being on the beaches and then moving to other places in the States, and like you were, I would say, conscious about being from Florida for some time until you met this girl from Texas who also has a very
Okay.
strange
Yeah.
status. She said, "How was that?"
So I think I met this Texan in New Orleans when I was in grad school. And so
Yeah.
just thinking she was talking about like what's going on with Florida. And it really made me think like, well, what's going on in Texas? What's going on in anywhere? You know what I mean? We're all have these maybe kind of cultural identities that we kind of don't necessarily are aware of all the time until we go outside of the state or talk to other folks. And Texas specifically has such an interesting kind of identity, as well as New Orleans itself. So that kind of reframed things for me and made me think like, what is going on with Florida? And it's interesting. Years ago, I forget how long ago, maybe 5 or 7, 8 years ago, I was in Paris and I was wearing a Disney World t-shirt, like a Mickey Mouse shirt.
Mhm.
And I went to this flea market, and this guy was like, "Oh, Disney, like Orlando." And like you were talking about Florida. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people identify maybe Florida is because of Disney. So he automatically kind of recognized that. And we started talking about Florida. And long story short, he had some friends who had moved to this area to open a restaurant, like a Parisian restaurant. So I think that's probably like one of the reasons why people know it as Disney, and then also as the beaches. I mean, they're gorgeous vacation spots. So
Absolutely. And I guess like TV shows like Miami Vice were very popular in Europe and in Germany in particular. Also Dallas. So that's why Texas and Florida are.
right. Mhm.
I would say we have like three states, that is California, Texas, and Florida, that most people can show where it is. And then of course you have New York, but and cities like San Francisco, LA, and New York, and yeah, I guess Miami and of course Houston are known. So here Tampa is for me it's a hidden gem actually.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So when I was doing my research, you're talking about cultural like identities and
Hmm.
personalities. And one of the reason why the Florida Man headline became so popular or known is because of the state's open record laws. So you can essentially, it's very open. You can get police reports pretty easily, whereas in other states, the process was a little bit different. So that's one of the reasons why these headlines became so popular. It's also generally hot, so people are outside more, and the more you're outside, the more chances you doing something sweaty, I guess. But like, you know what I mean? And there's like, that element. We're just outside a lot. We're just around each other. There's a lot of people. It's hot. And there is a history of like, you're talking about Miami Vice. There is like a history of drugs in the state because of the way that drugs kind of move through the country and like how they get exported and imported. So it's kind of because it's right there as a port, kind of. It's a lot of ports in the state. So.
How did you become an author and a poet?
So I grew up being my grandmother read to me every night. So I always grew up thinking about writing and like storytelling. And she wrote in her journal all the time. So I think I just grew up in this idea of like the importance of reading and writing and just thinking, oh, I love it. I found it so magical that people could tell stories and then have them in a book and then people would talk about them. And I think that was really powerful. And so that seed was planted. And then my trajectory was essentially, you know, when you go to college, even now, they're like, don't be an English major, don't do something in business. That's never going to get you a job, be an engineer or whatever. So I did business along with English and I read a lot. So I was literature. So I read a lot. And then I was writing on the side and like writing in other classes. And then I kind of just started writing more and being more involved in communities. Like when I left Florida, I immediately went to Chicago. So I was hanging out with other artists and writers and really thinking about the act of making work. And then so from there, I was just kind of submitting and really trying to be focused on being published in certain aspects. So I think it's the two things would just essentially be make the work. You have to have something. And
Mhm.
there's a difference between being a writer and an author. And not that I'm like making any kind of hierarchical distinctions, but a lot of people can write and they can enjoy that and they don't want to be published because they don't care about that. And I love that. I think that's amazing and more power to that. And then the other side is, well, then when you want to start being published, then you have to start submitting to magazines and like agents, depending on where you're trying to be published. So there are two different things and two different parts of your personality and your brain. I would say that.
So you would say every author is a writer, but not every writer is an author because he doesn't publish. Is that
Well,
right?
I mean, technically,
Hmm.
I say everyone is a writer. And I say if you are making your own work and you're distributing it, you're an author. I think everyone is a writer, author. Like, I don't make those distinctions. I guess I'm just kind of talking about like the acts are different. Because writing for yourself is different than writing for an audience because you have to think about like how the reader is going to respond.
Hmm.
And being published in certain venues, you have to like deal with editors and things like that. So they're just two different skills, but I don't think either is better or worse or like no hierarchy. But some people would say to be an author, you have to have something published. But I also think like you can publish it yourself. You
Yeah,
can make
you
a
can.
pamphlet or like whatever, and you're an author. But I know people who write a lot and they don't publish anything. They don't want to.
Yeah, but yeah, it still doesn't make them good or bad. It's just not published, I guess.
Because their writing is for them, not for any other
Yeah,
people, which I love. I think that's awesome.
maybe it's easier. Like when you publish, is there a danger that you write like that so that it's easier to digest maybe, or that it's easier so that people buy it? Or like, is there maybe a subconscious bias towards that, or is it just you really write for yourself and then you publish it and wish it all the best?
That's how I have been for a while. But
Yeah.
I think I think there's something interesting. Like I'm working on a novel right now that is commercial fiction. Like that's what I'm trying to write. And so that changes some of the choices that I will make. So it's cool, like the constraint or the container of this is it's a romantic comedy. So it's like, this is a romantic comedy. What does that mean? And how do you write within this container?
Hmm.
Whereas when I'm writing poetry, it's like poetry doesn't have a container, it resists it. Though it can be put in a container like, oh, this is a sonnet or whatever. But poetry just is like a little bit more loosely connected to genre because it can be so many things. So for me, it's kind of a fun practice to be like, I want to write this, I want to write a sonnet, or I want to write this, and how does it change the choices that I'm making? That's how I try to see it right now.
How did your like family react when you said, "Oh, I want to be an author"? Because usually, I don't know, if you want to do something creative, was there backlash, was there support, or both?
Support. I mean, my grandmother had been a reader and a writer, in her journal. She was someone who wrote but never tried to get published.
Mm-hmm.
She was writing in her journals every day. Um, they knew it. I was writing all the time, and my family's always supported me and like trying to be happy and everything like that. I also come from a working class family, so I mean, yes, I'm sure we would all like to have more money, but like we didn't come from money, you know what I mean? So it's like
True.
we're making our own path.
When or how did you decide that Florida is your main topic in the last? I mean, it could still be important to you, but not write about it. But like, why is it? Why is this your mission so far?
That's a very good question. I think that I realized along with conversations with people like the person in the Texan in the bar, as well as my friends and everyone else, that there are a lot of stories in Florida that are untold or like they're just not as noticed. And this it just became interesting to me. And so that's why I was focusing on Florida. It was conscious in so much as like, oh, I have a curiosity about the place that I come from. And when I'm curious about something, that's when I want to do some writing about it and some of my own thoughts and some research. So from there, I just kind of unraveled this kind of idea about the state and that showed many other stories. So I had started writing this book my last year of grad school. When I was in getting my MFA in creative writing, I didn't really write about Florida the whole 3 years I was there, except for like my last year, like half a semester. I was more focused on different narratives, personal writing, stuff like that. And so it shifted when I came out of grad school. And so it was mostly because I was curious and I wanted to know. And so then I was writing poems and essays about Florida. And I still am. I mean, the essay that I wrote, I mean, the most recent thing that I've had published, like was published last month or this month, was about Florida as well. But in a different kind of way, it's like this kind of like horror climate romance, weird like mashup kind of thing going on. So people will ask me, like, do I feel too limited by Florida as a subject matter? Like, oh, that's what I'm known for right now as like Florida person writing about this. I don't feel limited in any kind of way because Florida is multiplicities. As you may know, the more time you spend in Florida, the more you'll see that North Florida is so much different than Tampa, is so much different than Miami. They have their own personalities. It's like its own kind of, it moves with all its personalities. So to me, it's just a spectrum of what Florida is. And so I relate to that. And I'm happy and like excited that I come from a state that has so much richness in terms of misconceptions and just interesting people. And like literally every story can be a Florida story because of the kind of wide range of what's happening here. So I don't feel it limiting, I feel it expansive. And thinking, I mean, I write a lot about the environment too. Florida is and unfortunately, for those of us that live here, is like uniquely positioned. It's like precarious when hurricane seasons are coming in, climate issues and things like that, wealth issues. I mean, everything is happening. And it's more kind of extreme here in some ways.
Hmm.
So I think if I'm only ever writing about Florida, which I'm writing other things, but like if I was like only ever had to write about Florida, I would never run out of things to write about. So not a bad thing.
Definitely, it's also huge. It's a big state. It's a big piece of earth. I mean, for the compared to Texas or everything, of course, everything is smaller. But I mean, I think it's as big as Germany. We drive 10 hours or 11 hours north to south, and if you come from Key West up to Tallahassee, it's more, I guess. I mean, driving to Key West is a pain.
Yeah, no,
It's
it's so
fun.
far. You're
It's
truly going to Key West.
it is far, and it's also what's also so interesting is when you think of the at the Civil War here, like you have the northern states, you have the southern states, but you never considered Florida southern. It's just something, it's just out, and it's the most like geographically southern state, but it's just not in there. It doesn't like swing with it, and it's for us at least. I don't know how it is here.
Well, I write about that in my book, The Thing About Florida. There were Confederate soldiers from Florida in the Civil War, but I think because we don't think of it as culturally Southern in some, I mean, okay, it's such a hot, that's a hot button issue to talk about. It's polarizing because for one, in the cultural consciousness, we don't consider Florida Southern, culturally Southern as a
Mhm.
state, but that's because like, I think so many people have moved here. It's such a melting pot of cultures. And because it's a long state, like you were saying, they'll say like North Florida is South Georgia, and it's kind of more, if you stereotypically identified with culturally Southern, like Jacksonville and like the Panhandle and things like that. And so I think that not an easy place to identify in any kind of way, but so that's one of the reasons. But then I mean, it's a very now we see politically, like how has the past 30 to 40 years aligned with what we might think of as Southern politics, whatever that means? And what does that mean? How has the state kind of aligned itself with that? I think that's where people are looking at. Like if you look at the voting records and kind of the state's history, it would read as traditionally more conservative,
Yeah.
which a lot of people align with the history of the South.
I mean, for us outside of the States, especially Europe and especially Middle Europe, Germany, the United States is a conservative country. Even the Democrats, for our like taste, are very, very conservative. There's not much liberal attitude towards that.
Right.
But of course, then the conservatives, Republicans, are even more conservative with some things, and yeah, it's very different from our culture because we are in the middle of Europe. We have nine neighbors, different countries, different languages, different histories, and war with everyone, peace with everyone, or allies with everyone, or whatever, and just different philosophies and ways of living. So for us, it's natural to just look outside. We say, look above the plate where we see, okay, there's more, and that's why I think it's so important to leave the state where you live in, or even the country, if better, or the continent, just to see that my own country, my own culture, where I come from, is just one way of seeing the world, but you can't experience it unless you look at it from outside. So you have to leave the forest to see the forest, the whole forest. Otherwise, you
Totally.
just see trees. And I don't know, did you like where have you been, and where did you feel home other than Florida? If so, maybe not. I don't know.
I
Have
mean,
like a click moment where I said, "Oh, I never seen it that way."
I felt like home when I was living in Chicago. I feel really comfortable in that city. I love that city.
Also in the winter.
Well, no.
Coming from here, I mean, you're so spoiled here with
I know.
sun.
I don't like the cold, but I like the thing about Chicago that drew me to it is several things, but the art and the kind of artistic culture there. Also, I love being in a city that has public transit. Let's start there because I don't love driving. I also just like I felt like myself in Chicago. I had this moment when I was walking down the street and I was like so by myself and just felt like so comfortable being alone and like, but surrounded by people. It just made me feel really like I can be alone here in a way that was really profound to me. Um, and so I love it there. I when I was in grad school, I don't necessarily feel like as at home in New Orleans because New Orleans, I love it and I had a great time and I felt very comfortable there, but it has its own very specific history of and the States and beyond, and also just like its history of trauma and like with like the Hurricane Katrina. And so that felt like a more specific place to be. Whereas in Chicago, it's like New Orleans is also a lot smaller. Like it has such a big personality and like place in at least my imagination of this country. But I feel like the last time I was there, or I was living there, I think only like 300,000. I don't quote me on that, but a few 100,000 people live there, right? Or
Yeah.
like maybe more. But anyway, there's just like not as many people
New
like
York.
live.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It just has such a big reputation and like vibrancy to it. Whereas in a place like Chicago, there's just so many people. So it felt like, oh, I could just navigate that in a more anonymous kind of way. Like, and being like, I don't have to, I can be going through the city in my own kind of journey and can be anything that I want it to be because it's this big city. Whereas New Orleans, I didn't feel that way because it's such a specific history and culture that I respect. But yeah, of course, living in Florida, I love the heat and I understand the state better than any place that I've lived. I'm curious though, like, so what drew you to Florida then? Because you are, you're living in Tampa and you're like relocating.
Well, it's actually when I was thinking about moving to the States, it was 3 years ago, and I always have been visiting mostly Texas, Arizona, because my family is in Mexico, so it's just 6, 7 hours from the border, and I have a family in El Paso living there since 2 generations. So I always was the kind of a like Western drawn thing. I also love Westerns and the music and all of that. And then when I was here three, 2 times before I ever visited Tampa. I was in St. Pete. I was at the FedCon working there and meeting friends and networking. And from there, I usually made a tour of New Orleans or Nashville or wherever. And then last year, for the first time, I had a 3 months, like max, like 90 days is the maximum you can be here legally as a tourist. I said, okay, I'll stay here 90 days. And my friends in Germany that who are like cigar smokers said, "Hey, if you're in St. Petersburg and you have never been to Tampa," I said, "No, I mean just at the airport." What? You need to go. It's Cigar City, and there's this and there's that. And I said, "Okay, well, interesting. Okay." And then I met a friend, now a friend at the FedCon who lives here, and he said, "Well, you have to visit Ybor City." And I thought, Ybor, it sounds so not American, but so does St. Petersburg. And so I said,
Right.
okay, well, let's go to Igor's, big young Frankenstein fan, to Ybor City. And I saw it, and I don't know what happened with me, but I knew New Orleans, and I said, wow, this is very similar. And I
Yeah.
like the vibe of it. I love the climate here. I love the heat. And that's why it's so hard for me to be outside with 40 degrees, which is 100 and something, and you enter a room and it's like 70 Fahrenheit. I say, what the, why, or even worse. But then I saw Tampa, I met people, and then I was still driving around Nashville and Memphis and New Orleans, and I was still figuring out where I would like to start because I always thought it would be Texas or something, and I still love Texas. I love all the space in Arizona, all this Wild West. But then I came back and I had the right vibration here, and I thought, well, this is not too big. It is not too small. It's close to the beach. I had hurricanes here, so I said, well, if I want to live here, I should at least experience one or like how it is. It was an incredible story last year. And then I met people in I don't know, networks, and I saw how, like, for me, beautifully the city was like this old Art Nouveau and old 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s houses are still there. Of course, they've also built new stuff, but the preservation of that and the Latin attitude, the music, the laissez-faire, as we say, the easy living, and the love for, I would say, hedonism here, and
Yeah.
the crazy stories of people, it's all a little bit more than necessary,
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
it's not pragmatic. It's very colorful. There's great music everywhere. And you see, I mean, as a portrait photographer, I get inspired like I get blitzed and glimmered all the time. It's hard to not constantly take pictures. And so, yeah, I felt at home here for the first time for real. And I thought, wow, I would have never thought it's Florida or Tampa, but it is. So that's how it happened. And I
And
didn't
that's
know anything about that because it was a funny thing. When I was driving around, I said, "Oh, I'll go back to Tampa." Oh, beware! There's only crazy people in Florida. I said, for me, it's like, huh? Why? What? Like, did you never heard of the Florida man? I said, what? Like, who is that? Like, I thought it's a specific politician or whatever. No, you read all kinds of things. Like they told me New York, they told me national. I said, well, whatever happens here in New York, that's what comes to Germany in the news. We never heard anything about a Florida man or something like that. And it's really funny because that was the first time I heard that, and I saw the discrepancy between Florida's image in Florida or in the States and Florida's image in Europe. But it didn't prevent me from. I said I only had good experiences with everyone. I said, okay, well, that's why I'm here.
where, and I'm not surprised. Ybor is a special place. I mean, it's small, like it's like a small area
Yeah, it's a
of
few
Tampa,
blocks, but it's
a few blocks, but I looked into living there when I moved back. It makes no sense for me to live there at all, like practically, like in terms of where I work and like where my community is. But I was like, there's something about Ybor. I'll live here, you know what I mean? Just the architecture and like all the things that you're saying, it makes sense to me. It feels exciting. I also think there are 33 million people in Florida, maybe more. We have people moving all the time, but last I checked, there was like 33 million. Of course, stories are going to be happening, and it's a huge, long state. Like you were saying, it's, as you said, probably bigger than Germany or whatever. And it's like, so of course things are happening, and people are doing, they're outside, and sometimes they're partying. You know what I mean? And so some things happen, but. It's interesting because I remember when I was living in New Orleans, right? Because they're like, don't go to like the quarter, but they're like, if you know the quarter, they're like, don't go on the outskirts and don't be drunk because they're like targeting, like if you're gonna get mugged or whatever, like people are looking for people that are alone and drunk on the like outskirts of the quarter. But if I don't know, I guess like if you're aware, I mean that doesn't mean you're not gonna get mugged. Of course, we can get mugged. All the like everyone has a gun, whatever. It's just like try to like not have a crazy reaction because the person that you will have a crazy reaction to may have a crazier reaction than you. Like that's my tip.
yeah,
But of course, I mean, things are happening and like they happen in every state. It's what I'm writing about too. They happen in every state. Like things are going on, people are doing things, but because of the records laws, because of our history, because like I said, we're out in the sun while people in Minnesota are in their house around the fireplace or whatever. We're like literally at the beach. So there's just more opportunity for us to like get in trouble in some ways. Which is
yeah,
like what makes it interesting in a lot of ways too.
yeah. I mean, the whole country is more of everything that we have in Europe usually. As you say, we have 6 months of not outside weather or more sometimes. I mean, we're used to it. Like if you have 18 degrees, which would be something like 65 Fahrenheit or 64, and
Right.
people put on shorts and flip-flops and go out because they say, "Oh, it's warm." And I said, I don't know if it's my Mexican blood or whatever, but I really don't like the cold. I liked
No,
it as a child because my birthday is January 23rd, and when I was a kid, it was snowing outside, so we had like snowballs and I made like snowman. It was fun, but now it's just the winter is not as it was. It's just warmer, and so it's muddy. There's no sunlight for months and weeks, and it's just really dreadful. And so of course, if you're outside, it's sunny, it's warm, it's flirty. You drink a little, and you're young. Usually, guys have the worst ideas between 16 and 26.
right.
Yeah, it's understandable, but I mean, yeah, like in my country, in Germany, there's no animal that can kill you. Maybe a wild boar.
Really?
It's the only one
Yeah,
that can really kill you. Anything else is not big enough or not
that's so interesting.
like toxic enough or venomous enough. Here,
And
you have everything from insects to gators to rattlesnakes to whatever. And I'm the United States. I speak in general. You have bears and wolves and mountain lions, and we don't have that. You can walk around our forests and be pretty safe unless there's a wild boar who has maybe kids, then they're of course the mother instinct. But I've never seen one in 46 years strolling to the German woods. So, and all these
Oh,
things like here, everybody can carry a gun, and you have more people in the streets who are drunk or drug addicts and all. Like everything is way more and more excessive than in my country, in the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's why it's more exciting. It's more
yeah,
like in
exactly.
movies for us.
And that's like, I'll say two things about that. So, someone that I interviewed for my book, she was a server on one of the beaches here. And so the people that she's serving, they're coming here for spring break. So it's a cons are like for vacation, not necessarily just spring break. So they're vacationing, all these tourists. And when you're on vacation, they're drinking more, you're doing things. So a lot of the Florida men, the person that they had the photo for the actual Twitter, he wasn't a Florida man. He wasn't a person who was from Florida or living in Florida, you
Really?
know? But so sometimes people will get in trouble because they're here on vacation and they treat Florida, and that's one of the problems is treating it like it's a place where you can do whatever you want. You can treat the environment however you want. You can treat the people and the servers however you want because it's
Yeah.
vacation. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
kind of mentality, but it's like for those of us that live here, we have our regular jobs. So yeah, it's interesting about how the state's reputation also allows people to be a little bit bad when they're on vacation here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people come here also from the United States, right?
Yeah.
Like it's one of the vacation goals for a lot of people. I guess if you're from the north where it's cold and especially in the winter, how do you call the people who live in the summer north and in the winter they come down?
Snowbirds. The snowbirds.
Snowbirds. Yeah,
Snowbird. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like that makes sense. I mean, who wants to have winter
I
and
mean, that would be it's so funny. I was always used to be like, we would be like, oh, those snowbirds. Now I'm like, I want to be a snowbird because
really?
because it's interesting because the summer is gonna get hot. You know what I mean?
Really,
Like
it's really
and
hot.
and that's when I want to go to Chicago because like then I want to be by the lake and like just it's hot there, but it's just like gonna be there's not a lot of shade because they've cut down a lot of trees.
Okay.
But but anyway, yeah, it's good. It's kind of like the people that live here part time.
What's the biggest misconception about Florida, would you say?
I think well, probably that. Nobody is from here. That's the thing. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I've never met a Floridian," or everyone, because we do have so many people that retire here from like other states or whatever, move here a lot post-COVID. A lot of people moved or during COVID too. So not a people would be like, "Oh, there's not a lot of native or like people from Florida." Um, and I'm a fifth generation Floridian, and a lot of my friends are Floridians, so we kind of found each other. So it's like, yeah, people are born here and we're, we're living here. I also think something that
Yeah.
it's difficult to talk about and pinpoint, but how expensive it is starting to be to live here has not kept up with like rents and things like that, haven't kept up with how much we're getting paid. So it's like wages aren't increased. And that's a thing that's happening around the country. But if you look at like, oh, the most expensive place, the increase in the past 5 years, Florida is often like Tampa is landing on that spot often. And I think too, partially because very wealthy people can live here part-time, the snowbirds that we're talking about
Mhm.
they bought their places and like whenever they bought them. But anyway, so just like difficult to make rent for a lot of writers and artists specifically,
Is it
we're
like
getting priced out.
how is the average cost to live in Tampa, Florida? I don't know what like I know in Germany what you would need to have a decent life. How much is it in the States now? Because it was always cheaper in the 80s and 90s than it was in Germany. Now I'm not sure.
I mean, the Tampa Bay Times had an article about it, and I'll have to fact check it that the numbers, but there was something like just to be like low key average, like living your life,
Yeah.
you need like $86,000 as your like salary or something like
Wow.
that. Which, some people might look at that and be like, oh, that's nothing. But when others of us are like, wait, what? Like, that's a lot. You know what I mean?
It
So
is.
think I
It's
think that, I mean, and it's also, if you live here and you have networks, of course we figure out ways to pay rent in terms of finding a space. We have network. Like that's the whole point of being, not the whole point, but one of the points of being in community with other people is resource sharing and looking out for each other. So it's like, yeah, we'll pass on information like, oh, I know this apartment over here that's like under market value or whatever. But yeah, if you're just moving here and you don't have any of that like networks, it would be a lot unless because people are also like
crazy.
getting paid partially wise because during COVID, people moved here and they were still having their jobs based in like Seattle or wherever. So they're getting paid more than they would have gotten paid in Florida. And they are living in Florida because they were able to live remotely and like work remotely. So they're often getting paid more because wherever they were working is based in a place that pays them more.
Hmm.
So that's part of it as well.
I guess, I mean, the costs have increased also. I was told because so many people moved here. I mean, how did it, since your fifth time Floridian, what did change in the last 40 years? Like when you were a kid
Well,
or
I mean, I'm not that old. I can't keep up with all the tracks. I mean, I am that old, but like I was not conscious, you know. But
yeah.
what we'll say is basically this stuff was doubling in the past 10 years. Let me tell you, like if I I had to like thinking about St. Pete, like it's just so much more expensive than it used to be. And it's hard not to be like, if I would have bought 5 years ago, but honestly, I tried to buy 5 years ago. I only recently kind of, or like 6, 7 years ago, I only recently came into a place where, I could do that. But it'll be interesting to see what happens because it's hard when oh, that house down the street, that was $200,000 5 years ago. They now want 450,000 for it. You know what I mean? We know that that's not how much
It's worth.
that should be getting. That was made in 1920. I mean, or like 1930. We know that needs a new roof. You know what I mean, or whatever. So it's kind of the economic situation,
I mean, it's all usually when you want to buy something, everybody says, "Oh, right now is the worst time." Every time.
right?
Then you do it, and then I don't know, 5 or 10 years later, it's usually worth more, unless,
Yeah,
of course, a hurricane takes it or whatever can happen. We don't have hurricanes in Germany, but we have a lot of floods, so that can ruin a whole plan for retirement or whatever.
right.
But basically, yes, that's also what I heard about houses that friends have here that cost 150, 180,000 now are like 300 and something thousand worth. It's cool, it's great, but still, I mean, for everybody who wants to buy, it's hard, I guess.
It's hard, and we also have a lot of competition because like we're talking about people will retire here. So they're working wherever they're working. And they said, I'm however old, I'm going to retire. Now I have this money. I'm
Mhm.
going to go buy a house in Florida
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. So we have a lot of competition too for houses, at least we did historically.
And is there like there's missing space to live here, right? Is there more people in houses, or how is it? Like people here anyway buy more than they rent, I have the feeling in the States. In Germany, it's the other way around. Like 80% or 70% of the people are renting, and the rest has a real estate. And here it's the other way around. I think 60 or 70% are owners, and the rest is renting.
That's so interesting, how culture shapes how you view ownership and housing and what is the most secure, ideal situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard if especially if you're an artist and or you don't have like a high income or whatever, and then you need a loan from the bank who needs safeties and securities. I don't know. It's Not easy. I don't know. In my country, it's not easy, but it's possible. But yeah, I don't know.
I want to go to Germany next summer, actually.
Have you ever been there?
I've been once, but I've never been to Berlin, which is where anytime
Where have you been then?
a lot of people tell me to go to Berlin because of the art and the writing situation.
I guess you'll like it a lot. Yes, Berlin is every time you go there, every like I don't know 3 to 5 years, it's a different city. It's changing all the time. Especially, of course, after the wall came down. I was 10, so in '89, and then I was there for the first time in '95. I think I was 16, and it was still you could really see the difference between East and West. Now it's just there's nothing left of this. Like, oh wow, this and this. But there's, of course, some parts of the wall and this, so for the tourists to not forget and remember. And yes, but it's a very vivid city, and it has a lot of music. I mean, it's the biggest, one of the biggest cities in Europe, and especially for people who love arts, all kinds of arts, it's very inspiring, and nobody cares. It's like New York, I guess. You can just walk around basically naked with a I don't know with a bone through your nose and pink hair or whatever on a cape and soap bubbles coming out of your wherever.
Hey,
People don't care. It's just Berlin. Like this is just oh just another
that's where I
day.
want to go.
Yeah. Or is
I
that
need that. I need an injection of that.
where have you been then in Germany?
Well, I studied abroad. Like when I was we went to Strasbourg we were in Paris and we went there and it was great. And I wanted to go to Berlin so bad, but we didn't, it wasn't on the itinerary. And I was like, I want to go to a nightclub in Berlin. Like I have to.
Oh
I
yeah.
just, I just couldn't make it work. We didn't have any time. But yeah, my friend a couple years ago, he went there and he was like working on his novel. He's like, it's a great place. And he's like, but I didn't get much done because there's just so much to do and like so much art to see. But I was like, okay, well, I want to finish a couple writing projects that I'm working on now. And then I want to go there next summer and
Yeah.
really like
I would recommend summer
see
because
what
winter you will hate it. Berlin
I,
has
yeah,
horrible winds. I don't know why they construct. If they would have moved the whole city for like 20 degrees, the wind would break, but it just goes right through right through the streets. In winter, it's really horrible. Every time there's the Berlinale in February, I don't know why they didn't do it in August, but okay. So I would recommend you summer, and it's a very green city. There's a lot of trees, a lot of parks, a lot of fresh air for such a huge town, and the public transport is really excellent at like all the time. So you don't need a car. You don't want to drive in Berlin. Definitely not. You'll
I
hate it.
never want to drive anywhere.
Yeah, I
So
mean here it's the piece of cake. It's even though there's traffic, but there's so much space. Like if you're used to Italy or Germany, it's just tiny. So here it's just if you can't drive in the States, you can't drive anywhere a car. I think this is really very easy to drive, and people are usually very like for us too slow because in Germany you just drive like this.
yeah,
It's very comfortable to drive here. Yeah, but you don't need a car in Europe usually. Even the trains and everything is. I mean, because I don't know why it came up like that, but our cities were always it was always important that people can have buses or trains or subways or whatever because we don't have so much space for parking, and it's exceptionally expensive to park there. So, and they don't want the cars in the town because they want good air. I guess that's why.
that all makes sense to me.
Should be here. Yeah, public transportation here is not the best, if not existent at all. There's just one in Ybor, which is sweet, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. It's only the older cities here, right? Like New York, Boston, Chicago.
Right. Yeah. The city is right. I mean, St. Pete has some bus transportation, but it's definitely nothing as, you know, advanced as other places.
In movies, they always show it very dangerous. If you go to the subway or to the bus, that's when shit happens. Or there's like punks in the 80s with their loud ghetto blasters and they shoved around the old lady. Like it's the Hollywood impression we have of that.
Yeah, I'm sure that happens.
But everywhere.
But it's dangerous to be on the streets driving, you know? People aren't paying attention. Like it's dangerous in a different way, but
It's
still
true.
quite dangerous.
It's true. Um, like talking again about you as an author,
Yeah.
do you have any role models or inspirations from maybe from Florida or outside the States? Someone would say, "Oh yeah, I can read it all the time," or it inspires
There's
me.
this one of my favorite American novelists. Her name is Toni Morrison. She wrote The Bluest Eye, which is bringing that up is like a book that got banned in Florida recently. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, it's she's I think one of the I mean not she's one hands down one of the greatest American novelists. On the storytelling is immaculate. The sentence level is delicious. It's very, very good. So I read all her novels when I was in college for a class, and it really blew my mind the way that her lyricism and like the poetry of the sentence fit within this broader narrative. So I would definitely say Toni Morrison. I think when I was younger too, I was reading a lot of um I really was reading Shakespeare and being annoying. I was reading a lot of the Bible, you know. So those were the kind of texts that I was reading when I was younger. But I would definitely say Toni Morrison. I think Flannery O'Connor too I mean, she is a Southern writer, like that affected me, and her storytelling is very good and top notch. I also would say that I liked David Sedaris, who's a humor writer. His nonfiction, I was reading a lot of him when I was younger too. So those are some of my kind of influences. I mean, and how that shows up in my work, who knows? It's like, I mean, David Sedaris a little bit more kind of in terms of the timing of the writing, but I don't know. It's so interesting with the ideas of influences, and because I love that question and people ask me that, but I'm also like, these are just people I like to read. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but that's usually it.
and it's right. So it's like, how do I know how did they affect me? Probably a little bit more attention to language. And it's interesting because I didn't come from, so I teach at an art school, and a lot of the visual artists, they will be taught how to draw or whatever by copying other people, you know,
Hmm.
specifically, right? And
Yeah,
that's like the tradition of art is one
yeah,
way
yeah,
that,
yeah.
and I mean, in writing, that's not dissimilar. Like I've had people who said, I've had classes where my teacher gave us poems, we analyzed them, and then we wrote our own imitation of these poems in these kinds of ways, like a sonnet with this kind of rhyme scheme or this theme, like, you know, our own version of that. I never did that kind of thing until I was in grad school where we're like writing in different forms, right? So I kind of didn't have that direct um, lineage as maybe as direct as some other people did.
Yeah, I mean, I guess inspirations are an interesting topic in any way. I have photographers or filmmakers or I don't know, singers, music, anyway, anything that inspires me, but it's not that I sit down and try to copy something from them, but
Right.
I guess subconsciously just leads my taste to certain things, and then I try to put a little aspect of that in there, or it kind of puts the flavor in a composition or something like that. That would maybe be the way. But yes, of course. I mean, when you start out, you say, "Oh, this is a great picture. I want to try to copy the lighting or whatever,"
Right.
and then you see it, and then it usually never looks the way that the original artist does it. So then you just twitch it a little and make your own out of it. That's the point, I guess.
And I think that what you're bringing up is, I think, what inspires me now about when I see a writer or an artist push a boundary that I didn't really even know I had in their voice and their writing and their subject matter or whatever. I'm like, oh, you know, that allowing me to say, oh, okay, this is how this person is doing it. Oh, I can push it a little bit more, you know? That's what's inspiring to me now.
Did you since I met you on stage, and usually writers are shy creatures, do you
Yes.
enjoy being out there? I mean, you also teach so in front of a class, but do you enjoy being seen and heard, or is it something you have to like how do you say, like get over, or is it something you say, oh yeah, I like it? Because you seem very, very cool, like fish in the water, like really.
I appreciate that. I think that I love that question. I've been thinking about that. It's something that I used to hate when, 10, 15 years ago, I grew up a Southern Baptist, like queer kid, hating my voice for the way it sounded, which I think people,
Oh wow.
that's not uncommon to hate how you sound or like dislike it and be self-conscious. But for me, it's like a
Really?
whole other thing because also I didn't want people knowing I was gay. So it's not just, oh, I dislike it. It's like, oh, I
Okay. I don't
yeah, exactly.
know.
Because I was like going to hell, getting kicked out of school. It was like intense, you know? So I really did not like how I was sounding and I didn't want to be in front of people. And so I think that I realized, well, actually, what really truly happened was that I was working at this place at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and a better job opened up, better meaning same pay, but like better out, like more hours, in another part of the museum. And in that part of the museum, you had to give presentations to 300 people because we were in a theater and like just like 5-minute ones, but still you had to be mic'd up talking to 300 people or whatever. And I was really like, I need this job. Like, I need this lateral move because it was a more solid job. And I was like, I hate being in front of other people, but I need the job. And that's really what it was. I said, listen, I I have to do this and I have to get over it. I cannot let this keep me from being this position, it's so crazy. And like so
Sounds
then I
so
went,
mature.
yeah, I needed the money. And so then I just was kind of I realized something. I love that I did that because I realized this that there were 300 people there. Probably like 10% were paying attention. They did not care what I was having to say. They wanted to see the show. I was just talking a little bit of science facts about the film.
Yeah.
They did not care. And then the 30% or the 10% that was listening, they really they wanted to hear what I had to say.
Mhm.
So therefore, I need to get over it and just say the things that I need to say because they need to hear them. And so something like that just clicked and I was just like, people are gonna hate it, but some people will love it. And you can't let people that are gonna hate it, because that's the whole bullying aspect. I can't let people bully me out of these jobs. And so I think now I feel a lot more comfortable and I've done that. But do I love being on stage? No. Like it's that, or else I would be an actor. Or I would be a stand-up comedian. That's what I would be. If I loved being on stage, I would do stand-up, which I have done before. Um, I was doing, and I'm not bad at it. But
I
now
know,
I
I
just
saw you.
right. So there's elements of it in the performance, right? But if I loved being on stage, I'd be an actor or I'd be a comedian. But I do see it as writing, especially with poetry and just writing in general, but specifically poetry comes from morality, like spoken word. Like that's how, before people were writing these stories or these poems, they were telling them to each other. And so like this literate culture emerged from the oral culture. And I think about that a lot. And so also I had this professor in grad school who really solidified this for me because we would have to read the poems in class. And a lot of the poets and just people, they would just be a little bit more. We're shy people. That's why we're like observing and writing our thoughts. Like people that are extroverted, like they don't want to be doing that most of the time, like not to be too black and white about it, but like no, we're like observing, we're like writing, we're like, crying, whatever. She said, don't disrespect the poem. She's like, speak it. Don't disrespect your work and don't
Yeah.
disrespect the poem. Even if you feel a kind of way about yourself, the poem deserves to be heard. And so that really like clicked for me. And so now anytime I go in front of somebody, I'm like, it is what it is. I'm just like, well, they're only going to hear me for 5 minutes, but I'm going to try to do my best in those 5 minutes or whatever it is.
Are you a perfectionist?
I used to be, and I think like that's a great question. I think in some ways, but in a lot of ways, no, because I think I'm so interested now in writing and creating work that I'm interested in getting it as good as I can get it. But I know that there's no such thing as perfect, and that's liberating in a certain way. I definitely want the work to be as good as it can be, but I'm also like, how marginally better can it be? Like, am I going to spend 5 years making it like 2% better? Or am I going to be like, this is very good, and I know that because I feel good about my skills and like the response, and now I want to go work on something else. So I'm like working on too many projects to be like a perfectionist in the sense of like I'm holding on to this precious thing
Yeah.
until it's. And sometimes you carve the wood too much and you've carved it where it's unrecognizable, and like you've done too much and you've made it worse. You know what I mean? At least for me, it's overwritten now. I spent too much time writing it. And so now it's like too ornate, when it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. So I think like for perfectionist, I would say, how does that serve you? Like, of course, use
Exactly.
it as much as it's going to serve you. Like, if it's going to make your product or your thing that you're making great, cool. But like, if it's going to keep you from going on to the next project and putting something out there, then I don't think that's great because what is that perfection even going to look like? Especially with writing, right? It's a little bit different than visual art because we can look at something and be like, wow, that's amazing. Like I could never do that. Like it's this masterwork, like painted, this person did all this like detail. You can see all of that. But when it comes to writing, I think people experience it differently in terms
Mhm.
of like, oh, I didn't like it because the character made this decision and that was so far out of the realm of what I think a person would do or whatever. Like that's how they're judging it based on
Yeah.
what the characters are doing, not necessarily they'll be like, "Oh, the writing was really beautiful, but the character was like went left when I think they should have gone right?"
I think, I mean, a lot of people, when I do mentorship for creatives as well, and the perfectionism they have sometimes is like, I mean, where does it come from? Just they want to be loved. That's the point for what they do. Actually, we all want to be loved when we expose us. So the worst thing is that you do something that you love, you put a lot of effort in it, you put it out there, and everybody says it's shit. Because if this is shit, I am shit. That's what people think and feel usually. And so the perfectionism inside, like, tries to tell them if everything is perfect, then they will love you. But what is really happening is it takes away all the air and all the wind to just put something out, and it's a perfect excuse to not do anything also. Like it's a very two-sided sword. So I think, do it as good as you can, but also set yourself a limit and say, okay, I will finish until this day, and it is as it is. And then you just force yourself, or you have, in the best case, someone who says, okay, I'll take it, and boom, out with it. And it starts with a social media post and it ends with a movie or a book or whatever, or being on stage.
And I think too, so I love that. I think so. Figure out what you think is good, what your own taste is, what you are confident in. And also, I have trusted readers, critical people who will give me feedback. But if you're gonna be like, oh, people are gonna love it or hate it, well, listen, people will love hate something because it's too perfect. They'll be like, oh, we wanted it to be messier or whatever, like
Yeah.
more, So it's like response. And I think that's the thing that truly with writing, which is my main, obviously, craft, timing, taste, zeitgeist, there's so much that goes into what becomes considered good or what people read. And that's the tea leaves, I don't know. Like I cannot predict because now it's like people are reading a lot of horror and a lot of like that's what they're reading now because, well, some subgenre because of everything that's going on. they're like now they want to read horror, whatever. So it's like popular. So it's like, do you know, like when times of political unrest are happening, people are gonna want to read this more like horror stuff. I mean, maybe you can project that and write towards that, but then in some ways, like that's a losing battle too, because then maybe they don't want to read horror anymore because it's too horrific what's happening or whatever. So it's just like you got to do the work, you got to do what speaks to you and make it as good as possible and be like, listen, nobody like that what I wrote stuff that I've written hasn't, some stuff has gotten a lot of visibility and press and stuff, and some stuff hasn't, that I think is actually very, very good. Some of my best work is like not the stuff that was maybe talked about the most. I was talking about this with my friend the other day, but I still know that's good. You know what I mean? Because I think it's good, like,
Yeah, I mean, if you know it's good, then it's good, period.
yeah, and it could be tweaked. I'm sure it could be better, but like, it helped me move on to my next project or whatever. And I think like the life of and this is what I tell my students and what I think so many creatives struggle with, specifically writers, they'll go to grad school and then they won't write like after their MFA program because it's like pretty brutal and like rigorous, and they'll be like, I'm not writing again. If we are lucky, the life of the creative is long. Like we should nurture that and like see that as exciting. Like, oh, if you're a creative person, every day or like whatever, you get to take what you're seeing and then synthesize it and then produce something. Like, who cares if people like it? You are getting to experience the world that way. That's very special. And like, not everyone can do that, or has the impulse to do that. So that's very special. And then know that, everything's leading towards somewhere else. And if you are creative and you're allowing space for your craft to expand, you're going to be bad at some point. And this is what I talked about. And I believe that like some days you're going to be bad. Like some projects are not going to be good because you're still figuring out your technique, stuff like that. And then, but that keeps you like, don't let it keep you from getting something better. And I say that, and I mean, still obsess over it and tweak it and tweak it, obsess, but know that it's not going to be perfect because like, it can't be, you know? That's
Lots
what
of
I,
people won't even see that big of a difference if you do the 45th and the 47th tweak. It's
you
just,
know,
it's getting can
that
be a fetish. And I say, oh,
well, that's when you're getting like you can eroticize that, and I get that. Like if that's what you're doing, great. Like keep doing that. But if that's not what you're
serves
doing,
you.
if it's not serving you, then no. But I'll never forget. There's this amazing writer in Tampa Bay. So what's interesting about St. Pete, Tampa Bay too, is we have this history of writers, specifically journalists, because the St. Petersburg Times, that is now the Tampa Bay Times, was this amazing public is currently still here, but it's shrunk a lot. They won a bunch of Pulitzer Prizes. They were doing really, really amazing work, and like they have this strong history. And one of my favorite journalists, her name is Lane DeGregory. She
Yeah.
wrote an amazing piece called Girl in the Window, and it was this iconic piece. Like growing up here, heard about Lane. I saw Lane say something, and how I remember this, maybe it's not true, but how I remember is she goes back to read this piece that was iconic and won the Pulitzer, and still now says I would do things differently. I would write things differently. And when I heard that, I was like, holy hell, like this person would still change things. And at the one time I was like, damn. But now what I understand that to mean, I would change things about my book too, because now I have 10 years of experience writing. I would make different choices.
Mhm.
But I still look back and was like, for that was the best that I could do then, you know what I mean? So I think like you're always going to look back and there are going to be things that you're probably the choices that you would make now are different.
Of course.
But that doesn't mean that they're actually even that much better. Like maybe the way she would have written it would have been worse. Or like not as impactful, probably not. She's amazing. But like we just don't know if that would have been like the effect. The effect had what it had. It was this amazing like piece of work that affected so many people. You know what I mean? So that really I heard that about being self-critical, like, wow, even these people who write Pulitzer Prize winning things, they would change things years later.
I mean, have you, when was your first piece that you published?
I think there in 2000, I would say 2010 was the first time. I mean, I was writing for the school newspaper. So
Hmm.
I started my school newspaper in high school. So I was publishing, but I didn't have a really, I was just writing whatever. And then in college, I worked for the school paper. And then, so I was published like journalistically, but my first like true creative writing piece was probably 2010. And I go back and I look at that and I'm like,
Yeah.
I like it. I don't know. I'm kind of like, that was 15 years ago. He was trying. You know what I mean? Like he made some
Yeah.
choices.
No, it's fair. I mean, I look at old pictures or old movies I made. I started 2004, so it's 21 years ago.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, it's too long, or it's I would do
Right,
it
right.
differently. That the taste changed, the way you do things changed a little bit. But I'm
Yeah.
still very thankful to that guy because he brought me where I am now, and so I'm not criticizing or making fun of myself, which is basically the most stupid thing you can do because it doesn't help anyone. And also I'm not disrespectful to myself when I was younger because it's the best I could do at that point, and I always was hungry to improve, and that's fair. So, and I guess in 15 years I will do things differently than I do them now. Like in 2000, what is that then? 40?
Yeah, that's the exact thing that I think is so important for us to all remember. And that's only if we are evolving our craft. If
Exactly.
we're still making, you know what I mean? And so that's the goal is to be making, not even publishing, but just to still be doing this thing
Yeah.
like 15, 20 years until I can no longer, do it. Like that's my goal. And do I want people to like the work along the way? Of course, like I want it to resonate with somebody. And that's important to me, but it's also like important to not let the reception stop you from making things. That's the most
Absolutely.
important thing.
Absolutely. I think all artists, no matter the craft, are very similar in that way. They stand in their own way, but they really want to. They're usually very interested in life and curious. They have this childlike curiosity that they kept for themselves, which is what fuels your I'm uncomfortable with not moving and not evolving or with the state of where I am. You always are seeking something, at least how I feel. You never arrive really, which can be exhausting and and anxious, but I guess that's just the motor of being creative because you won't be creative until you're not happy with something or something triggers you or glimmers you, positive or negative. So basically, it's a seeking, lifelong seeking, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, I'm in this moment where I'm writing this commercial romantic comedy where I want people to read it. And I'm also over here writing these poems that I'm in this weird spot where I know the poems I'm writing right now are good. They're also not really, probably people won't like them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, because the things I'm thinking about and the kind of like connections I'm making are important to
Yeah,
me to be writing and like figuring this out. And I think like as a product, they're good objectively, but like that doesn't mean that people would like them. And so I think sometimes like I'm like, oh, I'm making this stuff that people probably won't like. Or I also know I could make choices to make poems that pe more people would like. I just don't want to do that right now. And like maybe I will want to do that in the future. I always think maybe I'll write more poems that, could be posted on Instagram more easily or like that are more like easily consumable by this kind of social media culture that we have. I'm not really doing that right now, and I'm not interested in doing that. But maybe one day I will be like, oh, this is interesting. Can I do this? I'm not there right now. So I'm writing more like longer, more like stuff that's not social media kind of content, you know what I mean?
how do you see social media? Like, do you use it a lot? Is it like a pain in the ass? It has to be done, or do you find joy in it, or is it? I mean, to be honest, it's yeah, can be tough, I guess.
You know, I think So it goes back to I wanted to say, it goes back to the public speaking. Okay, so do I love doing that? No. I'm tired, like just in general. I mean, we all are, we're exhausted. And so I think too with teaching, it is public speaking. It is a performance. It's the same thing. So I'm performing in my job and I'm performing on the stage.
Of course.
Will I do things that people ask? Of course, and am I happy? I love that. That's what you need to do if you are going to be like in a literary community and have visibility, like if you want to be that kind of writer. And I think that about social media as well. So I think it's objectively like on the whole bad. I would just say if we're saying good or bad, I will say bad because now the writers, and it's I think different too for visual artists, but the writers, because we're not as visual, so we have to make things differently for this visual culture. But the writers yeah, branding and stuff was important, but they had marketing teams, they had all of these things, and now we have to do a lot of that ourselves. It's like we have to build the platform, we have to do this stuff, and you're a lot of the times like your how marketable or publishable your work is. The work matters, but it's more so, if not as important, if not more so, your brand, because you're doing this work to push the product out you know? So I think social media has cut a lot of the resources that we used to have, that writers had to promote their work when teams were doing it. So
Hmm.
I think that's bad. And I think that it's good because it's helped people gain platforms that probably would have been like historically marginalized. Writers may not have had the success that they have, and their work is very good, but it's also platformed people that are just like making silly content and that are like, whatever, like not taking it seriously. And that's
Yeah.
fine too, whatever. I used to be salty about it, but now it's all out in the wash to me. It's just like, well, that's life, like whatever. I can either do it or not, but I bring that up to say social media is part of my job because if I get invited to do an event, this is what I tell students and writers too. If you're doing an event, you have to post about that event. You really do because
Yeah.
if it's at like like where I met you, or if it's at a bookstore, like they don't have huge budgets either. They're all like bootstrapping and they're all like, getting it together. And
Yeah.
you have to post about it because that's the culture that we're living in. Do we love it? Do we want to do that? Not all the time, but that is my job. Like if I get asked to do something and I don't post about it, like I'm not fulfilling that job. And that's how I think about it. Especially that's what I'll tell younger writers. It's not even if you don't have a platform, like nobody follows you, whatever, like tag the people in it because they will see that you posted. And I know this is like behind the scenes, but I know people see when you are posting because I've had, different events tell me, oh, like this post that you did well. And I'm like, oh damn, but like or whatever. That's part of our job. And if we want to be creatives who get paid for our work, which a lot of us do, unfortunately, that is part of the gig, or fortunately, however you want it to be. So I think I came to that realization. And so for me, it's like, here are the posts that I'm gonna have fun with it. Like it needs to be fun for me. I also am not on like I'm only on Instagram right now because the other platforms. I don't, I feel uncomfortable being like engaging with some of these for different reasons, for whatever reasons. We don't need to get into all of that. But it's also like, you know, how do you want to put your energy into the world and like how do you want to be associated? And like some of the social media, I don't want to I don't like the choices that they've made. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I know Instagram is like not the best, but like it's the one that I feel the most currently comfortable
Yeah.
using.
Yeah.
Because
That's
I also, just to like tack on to that, what really blew me is when Elon Musk bought Twitter or like jokingly said he was going to buy Twitter and then had to buy Twitter, whatever. And then a lot of writers were being deplatformed. And like now it's like, okay, let's say you've made your whole platform on Twitter. And now I know people have deleted their accounts with hundreds of, or not hundreds, like 20, 30, 40,000 followers because they don't align with that person, well, or whatever choices, or they don't like how for me, it's like how misinformation is not being regulated on these platforms, and how like hate speech gets kind of promoted and all this stuff. But let's say that. So who really owns your platform if you're on social media, if it can be bought by a billionaire or it can be taken away from you? So a lot of people are like, oh, well, then do a newsletter because then you at least owned the
Yeah.
email or whatever, and that's continuous. But that's newsletter is so much damn work. Like that's why I'm not doing one because I'm writing these other things. So I think I'm kind of just in this space with like, given what I'm doing and where I'm putting my energy, things are either going to pop off for me or they're not, but I can't expect them to be doing more because I'm not like, I'm doing what my role is and I'm promoting my stuff and I'm putting it out there in ways that feel like I'm doing the work. But it's such a crapshoot, you know what I mean? Like, who even knows how things go viral? So it's like, if you're going to spend your time obsessing over that to the detriment of the work, that's the problem. And I will give a little piece of advice because, I'm almost 40. I've picked up a lot of advice. Something that someone said to me that really clicked, and I still hold this dear to my heart, is that you don't want, and now I think you don't want to be noticed before you are good. And I've seen this happen where people, like years ago, when people were getting book deals and stuff off Twitter, they would have a tweet go viral or whatever. And they were young, and not saying you can't be good when you're young, but they just hadn't developed. They didn't know how to use that, like leverage the opportunities that they had because it came to them too fast. They hadn't been putting in the work. And I'm talking mostly about stand-up comedians because, that's the people that I knew at the time. And you have to like, why I don't do stand-up is because I don't want to be on stage, but also I don't want to be going to open mics at 11 p.m. midnight, when this stuff is happening. But there's a reason you do that. So your material is good and you have a set that is going to get laughs because you run it 100 times.
Yeah.
So if you get like let's say you make like some kind of Instagram reel and you're just messing around and then someone says, "Can you come do a set or whatever?" and then you just don't have the material, it's like you're not good yet. Like that's not no, you just don't have the experience. And that's not to say that you can't do that, but if you've been putting the work in for 10, 15 years, you're like, "Oh, I know how to make the most out of this
Yeah.
opportunity. I have a body of work now."
Hmm.
So when somebody said that to me, or when I realized that, maybe, I don't know, but it's like, oh, someone might have said it. Maybe I said it to myself. I was like, oh, damn. So maybe I won't get a big break. Maybe my break will happen tomorrow, like fingers crossed. But maybe it will happen in 20 years. And then I'll have 30 years of bullshit that I've been saying to like content or whatever. Or
Yeah.
maybe it will never happen. And if it never happens, like, and I'm not a bestseller or whatever, like, that doesn't mean the work wasn't good and I didn't have a good time making it and I'll like laughs and friends along the way. You know what I mean?
I mean, especially if you do your crafts and arts for only for success, it's hard. I mean, it of course it kind of stains it. We all want to live from what we love,
Right.
but if you only do it to get famous or to get like yeah, well, seen or discovered, it's hard because then it's just not it's not you anymore for real. Because then you get influenced on okay, what's selling here, what's selling, I gotta, and it's okay to like to offer something that can be digested, but still it should have your DNA and your handwriting or your style. You cannot just do something to hopefully be discovered and just and then what? Like
And exactly. But if you put in the work, you know what? You're like, oh, I have these other projects. I can pitch this book. I can do this, whatever.
yeah.
I also just think that you can see it, with different people and how they operate and what their goals are. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, maybe it's like I've been criticized in the past by maybe not being as focused on maybe I should be doing more on. So like, people are whatever. I have a bigger platform. I'll have whatever different. But I also am like, but maybe I wouldn't. And then I wouldn't like have been spending all this time. But I think for me, it's so much more about community and relationships. You don't want to be a bestseller and then have no one to celebrate that with, like I don't want that. I mean, I want to be successful and have people that I celebrate and who celebrate me and who, it seems very lonely to just have something and then have no one to celebrate. Because you make one book and even if you make like say you get like an advance for like $250,000, like you have to write another book, baby, because then taxes and everything gets taken out. Unless you are like J.K. Rowling, you know what I mean? You're gonna have to write something else. That's not going, you're gonna have to get the gigs.
Yeah.
And to get gigs is really also, unless you're like high, like you've reached this upper echelon of like name recognition and prize winning. Getting gigs is by also being the body of work, but also knowing people. And they're like, oh, I know this thing, like you're doing this, let me put you in contact. It's about network and resource and stuff like that. So
Yeah, gotta get out there. I mean,
you have to, yeah.
I think I mean, yeah, social media can be like really a time killer and a bad influencer, but it's also a blessing because you can't have this much audience so easy and mostly for free. It's just a time. Like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would have had to need, I don't know, a journalist who's interested in your work or a TV journalist who invites you to a show or you buy very expensive commercials for cinema or for TV or for whatever. And now it's just everybody. I mean, yeah, it's work and it's not easy because everybody can do it, but it's an opportunity, it's a tool, and it can be fun. It's always like, oh yeah, you have to do it all the time. Well, maybe you start with it and then you can just automize it with someone else or give it out or source it out. That also
But
can
yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, it comes back to do I want to be a performer?
yeah.
No, because people are so often like, oh, you would be great on TikTok. You should just do, because sometimes I'll post like reels, whatever.
Hmm.
I don't like that. I don't want, like the people that are doing these TikToks and stuff, and like more power to them. And maybe not everybody wants to do that. It just makes me uncomfortable. I don't want my like face out there just like, I don't know, making like silly content, though I could do that. I know that I could do that. I just don't feel comfortable doing
Yeah.
that. So knowing as well too, like you don't have to do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. But if you don't do the things that don't make you like if you, but that because I'm not doing that means I don't have 100,000 followers. Like maybe I would do that and be like, I'm gonna be cringy and I just need to get past it and who cares? That'll help me build a platform. I'm just not there yet. I don't know. I don't like filming myself. I don't like, all that. I don't want to be a performer.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be so far. Why not? But
Yeah,
you have the talent, at least. I saw that. So,
thank you. And I guess that's just what I'm trying to say is like, know like what you're like you can only get to these point Z if you're gonna do like all this other stuff, but if you're not gonna do all that other stuff, like you just gotta be like, well, maybe the car, like, you know, be happy with it. And for me, it just truly comes down to is the work good? Like success, obviously I want to make money because I want to, like it's kind of shitty to be like a lot of people will, use photographers and like writers and be like want us to do work and not pay us for our work or whatever. But it's like, no, I need to make money. And it's just something we don't even talk about as much. But I'm more so because I have students, like I'm like, no, you need to get paid for your work. We all need to get paid for our work because the more money I have, the more time I have. And the more time I have, the more I can do this thing that I like to do. And the more space I have to have a bigger studio or bigger whatever, even a studio. So I think like that's where I'm at now as like an almost like in my 40s. Like I need to make money so I can have more time and space. And I mean, I just came from a residency. I was there for a month and it was just like all I had was time and space. And I got so much done. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh wait, oh that's how you get things done is by not having to do other stuff. Though I
mm.
was still teaching, but like it was minimized compared to like, the daily kind of grind of what we have to do. So that's what I think people like what I'm really at on right now is money gives you time. That everyone says time is money, but for us it is truly like different because we need time to write a novel. I need to sit in front
Yeah.
blank wall for 8 hours. I need that. I can't write any other like long things any other way. Um, I mean I can, but preferred way. I mean, I have to work, like, so I like still have an hour here, an hour there, of
Of
course. But
course.
like my preferred way would just to be looking at a wall for 8 hours. And how do I make that happen? You know?
Yeah, I mean it's usually time, knowledge, and money, and if you lack one, you can use the other two to get it usually.
Right.
Of course, it's bad if you have no time, no money, and no knowledge, but that I never saw that in my life, so it's
Right.
never like
Right.
that. If you, so, but yeah, I mean, and it requires also a certain discipline that usually comes with the hunger for a certain goal, and not every day. I mean, we all have this like, oh, what a shit, I don't want to get up or whatever. But usually there's an inner drive that leads you somewhere, and that's good. It's
Yeah, I mean, and I genuinely like writing. You know, I mean, there's obviously parts I like less than others,
yeah,
but on the whole, it's an enjoyable activity that I would rather be doing than a lot of other things.
and you can do it everywhere. It's the best part of your job. You can
Yeah.
work everywhere in the world.
And everything is that's the difficult part about writing to me is the same thing that makes it constantly fun is translating the visual world into text.
Oh yeah,
So the more I'm like, I have to go out because I need to see what people are wearing. I need to hear what it sounds like
yeah.
to be at a party, you know what I mean? Or like whatever. Because I mean, honestly, but like, so that's what's difficult is like in turning that embodied experience, which you're experiencing with your senses into text, that is difficult a lot of the times for me because I'm like, especially if you're writing a novel or like a narrative, there are ways to do it. But like if you're trying to be more traditional, it's like there's so many things that you have to be like, hand managing at the same time. Whereas with poetry, it's like I can just do whatever I kind of want. And like
It's
I don't
funny.
have to care if you get it or if you like, are following.
Like coming to the end slowly, is there one thing or one project or I don't know, one goal that you have that you really want to achieve with your writing? Other than being world famous and having the same success to J.K. Rowling or Tolkien or whoever. I don't
You
know.
know what? You know what? Okay, that's a great question because I've been thinking about this and I wonder because I think to a certain, I don't know. I want to always be, I want to get to the point in my career where I'm
Yeah.
like still able to take risk. So this is the thing, like, I want to get to the point in my career where publishers will pay me enough money and still let me take risk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've built up enough track record of sales and success. And then because I have a couple novels in my brain that are like cuckoo and like non-linear and like probably only people who have read my other work and they're like, oh, we get Tyler. Because I think if you have to like build trust with audience for in a lot of ways, like
Yeah.
to have commercial success and still be writing like weird shit. You know what I mean? Some people can do it. I don't know. I've tracked people's careers, and seen how they've done it and things like that. And
Yeah.
it's like they've had their singular kind of focus, but they've built up usually through social media. That's been the cool thing is like, okay, if this person has like 100,000 followers across whatever, they can do like a weird thing because their followers like that. They like that humor, whatever. But if someone who doesn't have that large of a platform, it's like, okay, I have to build that up. I have to build up a track record. And so I want to get into a place that will probably be like maybe 3 or 4 novels. I've thought about this. I'm like, oh, my fifth or fourth novel, fifth novel, depending is going to be truly just me looking at, oh, I shouldn't say it because I don't want to put that idea out there. It's going to be totally like weird and beautiful and lyrical and just like, what is this? That's what I want to do. I want to write that book and get paid to write that book.
Perfect.
That's my goal. Because I could write that book now. I just wouldn't get paid to write it. I could publish it, but I wouldn't get paid. So I want to get paid and write that. That's my goal. And I
Smart.
feel like it's complicated. Like, of course, someone that I really and like artists that I admire are people who get this kind of platform and they're still writing in their own voice, you know? Because I feel, and the thing that I've seen with writers and that I know, and just like in general, if you become successful, too successful, or like even known for one thing, it's like becomes really hard to write that other book because then you have this pressure. Like the stuff that I'm writing now, I'm going to tell you, I have like multiple novels like almost done. I have a book of poetry done. I have that no one has read. And I have, I mean, they've read some poems, but they have not read the full thing.
Is
I
the
have
one
a
that you had at the venue?
mm, no,
Okay.
that one's, I mean, I have an unpublished book of poems
Unpublished. Okay, okay.
done.
Okay.
And I really think it's very like me, you know. And I have a novel, and I'm gonna have a lot of work that, you know, whatever is happening. But nobody, and I bring that up to say there's something really liberating about not having expectation. Like no one has read a novel by me because I've never published a novel. Though I've written like my agent has it, you know what I'm saying? But like so as soon as that novel gets published, knock wood that it will, but I think it will, hopefully, cross our fingers. Then people are gonna have expectations, whatever those expectations are. Because they're gonna have like data. They're gonna be like, oh, he did this. What
Cool.
is he you know, but now nobody has that data, so I can do whatever I want. So I'm kind of like, oh, what's going to happen when people do have that? Is that going to change how I write a novel or like write a book or whatever, you know? So there's something to having that space to not having any expectations that I find really comforting right now and like actually really productive because I'm able to write more. But as soon as like that's out there, who knows how that's going to change my like thought process. Crazy, right?
I guess there's always a little bit of a back influence or that gets thrown back at you one way or another. I mean, you must be super, I don't know, super unapproachable or super positively ignorant to whatever happens when you publish something, and no matter if it's an album or a book or a film, but I guess there's always a little bit, and who knows what comes out of that? A novel could mean a script, and a script could mean a film or whatever, you know.
Oh, you know, it could.
My world.
That's I mean, that's the thing about having dreams. Like, yeah, I mean, but I guess what I'm saying and is like to kind of wrap this up is like wrap up this question and answer is like I think there's something to having the space to experiment, and I just, you know, I hope that I can feel that way and don't get crushed under the writer's block of like having to live up to whatever, you know. Um, So that's a long answer to that, but I almost wonder like sometimes, you know, being having that creative liberty and like freedom is like something that people don't share like respect about. They're like, "Oh, I wish I'll have my big break," or "Why hasn't it happened?" or like "I suck" or whatever. But it's like actually, what if you look back on this time after you have your big break and you're like, "Damn, I really wish I would have like cherished that moment because I had no expectations." You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so
and
I
you could
think like
fail and nobody notices. That's a
exactly nobody
big
cares.
freedom. No one cares if you're bad, so as long as no one knows you. You can try and try and try, but when they know you,
You're a flop. And then you're
boy,
not
you're in a
no.
pickle. That's when you really have to deliver. The first book is wow, and then what about the second? Like it's
Not as
uh-oh.
good as the first. You fell off.
That's
You
when
know
the
what I
real
mean?
stress starts. Like the
Exactly.
mind fog.
So I'm like,
Fog.
let me just write 5 books so that I have like
Yes. So you have it in the pipeline. That's good. Like they're ready. Here, next.
exactly.
That's smart,
Exactly.
actually. Really
So
smart.
that's kind of what I'm thinking, my hopes.
So where can people get your books if they wanna read them and buy them?
They can get them at and I will recommend independent bookstores. If they don't have them, order them through them. I would also, well, I mean, they're on like, you know, go directly to the publisher. So like the book, The Florida Man Poems was by Burrow Press, which is an Orlando, Florida-based Press. So Burrow, Burrow Press. Go to them. They're one of my favorite independent presses. They publish really cool work. And my other nonfiction book, if people aren't interested in poetry, was by the University Press of Florida, which is, you can find them online. So
Mm.
go directly to them is what I would say. I also would always say too, if you don't have the cash, if you're cash strapped, ask your library. Like the library can order, if they don't have it, ask them to order the book. That's always cool too. So that's what I would say. And I'm on Instagram, just
Yeah,
my name, Tyler, Tyler_Gillespie.
perfect. It's
Yeah.
Gillespie, it's not Gillespie. It's not like the the jazz player.
It's a hard G, Gillespie, like Gilman.
Maybe I
Yeah.
just said it wrong. I'm sorry.
No, a lot of people will call me Gillespie, Giuseppe. Some people, I don't know, like
Yeah,
that.
I
I'm
got
like,
the same.
whatever. I
They
don't
say
know.
Lorenzo. I say I'm not Spanish. Or
Yeah.
Luciano. I said I'm not Italian. It's like, but
Yeah.
what is it then? Is this what is this? It's Mexican. Really awesome.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, we'll put all the links, of course, down in the text so people can get in touch with you. And it was delightful to talk to you to get a little behind the scenes of a brilliant author and a true Floridian. Thank you
Thank you.
very
It's
much
such
for that.
fun. Yeah. It's so great talking to you. And I'm happy you're in Florida.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I gotta go back next week, but I'll be back definitely in August, hopefully then with all the paperwork done. And well, for you who have seen this video, if you wanna share it, please do and like, subscribe, and comment what you heard about the Florida man, or if you are one of those Florida men, maybe, and women, of course, and what you think about Florida. It would be absolutely interesting. Thank you so much, Tyler, and I appreciate very much that you made time for our little talk. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you. Me too.
Thank you very much.